What percentage of apprentices sort of like drop out after in the first year? Or
I think from the school leavers, I think there's only 5% that complete. Before you get into the building industry, it'd be good if you can do at least 2 or 3 months on site, and that gives them a bit of an indication of whether they want to become a builder or not.
what is success to you?
I think it was a learn to love it experience.
And there's always pitfalls that you can fall in, but then you've got no one else to blame but yourself.
Number one thing if you're struggling is to catch other people about it.
Hey guys, Better Builder Apprentice is brought to you by our friends at Builders Academy. Builders Academy is New Zealand's newest apprentice provider, and they definitely here to shake things up. Why use Builders Academy? Well, first of all, they're just as good as the other guys, but on top of that, they will come on site every 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah, that's quite a lot, right? That means that your apprentices will be a lot more engaged, and they'll have to learn a lot less modules in between trainer visits. Secondly, they are backed by master builders. And thirdly, they have an experienced and motivated team that knows the industry inside and out. In fact, most of them are ex-chippies. Now, Builders Academy are currently offering $0 fees if you sign your apprentice up before the 31st of August. So definitely worth taking advantage of this deal. Just go to buildersacademy.co.nz. Okay, that's it from me. Enjoy the episode. Blair, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Not a problem.
Yeah, no, it's awesome having you on. We've been talking a little bit off air about all sorts of different aspects of the industry. You're obviously involved with Builders Academy. Tell me a little bit about that. Are you you transitioned from the old guys that you were with? How did and are you like an owner, or are you just been brought over to kind of run the ship?
Yeah. So I was with the other provider beforehand, looking after apprentices, and Glenn Duncan left the other provider, and he's pretty much the main drive behind this Builders Academy, and got it up and going. And then he approached, he put the word out there, basically this is what's happening, and his view on how apprenticeships should run is sort of in line with how I feel they should be run as well. So it was a no-brainer for me to move over and work for Builders Academy.
Yeah. Okay, well, I want to talk a bit more about that. I want to talk about like how you guys are looking to improve the industry from that training perspective, from the guys coming through. But tell me a bit about your early days, just so I can get a bit of a background. So you used to be a builder, but where did you grow up? Did you grow up around here, or? Yeah,
out west. Westie, went to school on the shore. Yeah.
Where did you go?
Kristen.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so my whole family are tradies, so it was probably inevitable that I was going to head into that sort of profession.
No choice.
From grandfather, he was a builder.
Cool.
Engineers, uncle was a builder as well. Yeah, so it's sort of, I had a crack at farming for a period.
Oh, that's cool.
Enjoyed that when I left school, but yeah, fell into building, and it was just something that I really enjoyed. Yeah. So.
And so your old man was a builder.
He was engineer.
He was an engineer.
Yeah.
And so, how did you then transition? So, did you finish school, or did you sort of leave early to get into the trade, or how did that go for you?
Left in sixth form.
Nice.
Went from there, studied horticulture. Went to university, studied horticulture. Thought I was going to get into that, grow plants for a living, but that didn't excite me, And I came back. I played a lot of cricket. So I was sort of stuck in that sort of period where I was sort of borderline making the Auckland team, and I was going to be the next cricket star, and so to hold a job down and play cricket at the same time was pretty hard.
Yeah.
So I sort of was labour only for a long time. You'd go on a job and you'd sort of help out here, there, and everywhere, do a little bit of demo and bits and pieces, and then I flagged the cricket, and went balls in and on the building side of things. Yeah.
And how old were you then?
About 21. 21.
Cool.
19,
okay, and then
20, yeah.
And
so
then you just went straight work for a builder, and
yeah.
And then how long did it take before you got into the apprenticeship side of things?
So I did an adult apprenticeship in about 2013.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, when I say adult apprenticeship, it's like an experience recognition process. So you put together a portfolio of all the stuff that you've done. You still get assessed on the knowledge, but it's a quicker process. It's a short duration.
Right.
And so I went through that process because I was in business at the time. I had my own business for about 15 years. And then the licensed building practitioner scheme came in, and I was sort of at that stage when you went to get your LBP, the process to get it without being qualified was a lot harder. So I thought, shit, I might as well go and get qualified, get a recognition for my skills. So I went and did that, and then applied for my LBP and but I think it was about 2014. So I was only qualified for a year.
Right.
And that's when I decided the old body's not going to handle this sort of lifestyle forever. I got to look outside, see what else is out there.
So when you say starting you had your own business for 15 years. So what was that, a building business?
Yeah.
So you started your own building business, but you weren't technically qualified.
No, in those days you didn't have to be. Well, no one really questioned it. No one said, "Are you a qualified builder?" It was
Show me
just
your
basically
paperwork.
what have you built in the past. That was your portfolio was your skill level, and I suppose other people's word of mouth, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So what was that like, running your own business for? Because that's 15 years, a long time to run a building business. What was it like back then? And
it's hard work, eh? It's not easy. I think the building side of it is the easy bit, right? That's the easy bit. That's what we're all good at. We're good at working with our hands and all the rest of it. It's the stuff outside the building, the pricing, the invoicing, the quoting, all that stuff is stuff that you never get exposed to at school or in the trade when you're working as a hammer hand or whatever, right? So it's even as an apprentice, you don't get exposed to that. So yeah, that was the hardest thing to learn. Dealing with customers, that's another one. You've got to have a special personality to be able to liaise with other people and talk to them and work through issues and problems. It's hard work.
Yeah, it seems like that's like almost seems to be like that's one of the top 3 aspects that makes builders, because part of this journey of this podcast has been really finding out what makes a successful, building business owner, right? Yeah. And so I think one of the top 3 ones have probably been that personability, being able to communicate well with people, being able to receive and hand out bad news.
Yeah,
in the right way.
Yeah.
And so, the more personable you can be, I think the more it's going to help. So you did 15 years, and then how many guys did you have? The classic question: how many guys did you have working for you?
I had about 4.
Cool.
But it wasn't. I sort of felt it wasn't enough. I think to be successful, I almost needed 2 gangs. That's the way I felt. So you had 2 jobs on the go.
Yeah.
That in reflection, that's probably how I saw things. That if you have 2 jobs on the go, when one's sort of winding down, you've got another job lined up. You can push your boys onto the other job for a bit before the other job starts, all that sort of stuff, and you can keep that job continuity going a little bit better. Whereas if you just do one job at a time, it's hard to plan in between jobs and keep your boys busy and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, it seems a bit more high risk if you just have one site going. There's some sort of pause on site or something like that, and your guys
absolutely.
Just know where to go.
What are they going to do?
Yeah, 100%.
They're going to go and work for someone else. Yeah.
And why did you decide on building as opposed to the other trades? You got the plumbing, the electricians, they seem to be on good coin. Don't know about back then, but is there a reason you went into, is it just because of the family side? Or
Yeah, it was probably my uncle, him being in the building industry. I went and worked for him for a bit, and then the connections through my father in his engineering business. He worked with a lot of builders, building beams and bits and pieces for them. So he had connections there, and that's how I got onto my first guy that I worked for. Yeah, so he was in the workshop one day and says, "I'm looking for a guy," and Dad says, "Oh shit, Blair's keen," So
seems to be a lot of guys like that. Eh?
Yeah.
It's just like I had a family friend, they were looking for a guy, and then that's how I got into it.
Yeah.
Okay, so then after 50 years of running your building business, I'm kind of interested to know what was the sort of motivation and thought around transitioning out of that into becoming like an educator, trainer? Was that did you think of that straight away, or did you just say I need to find something else? What was sort of the thought around that?
So for me, it was family reasons. So I've got 3 children. When my oldest daughter, she's 20 now, when she turned 10, I saw a picture. There was like a collage of photos at her 10th birthday of what she's done in her first 10 years, and I'm looking at these photos going, when did that happen? I missed that. So from my point of view, it was more of a family reason, the reason why I got out, because I didn't have children not to be with them. There's more to life than making huge bucks or being a business owner. So I thought, I've got to change this, because I only get one shot at being a dad. So I started thinking, what am I going to do? And I knew Glenn Duncan, and he'd talked about the apprenticeship stuff before, and that's when I went through and did my apprenticeship. And I'm sort of thinking, this is pretty cool. I wouldn't mind doing it. I didn't want to be a sales rep, I didn't want to go out and sell timber for a living. That didn't excite me. The excitement of working with the young guys and trying to help them and motivate them to get from start to finish, that excited me. That was interesting. So I thought, I'll give this a crack. Went for a job interview, and it was the first ever job interview, after all these years. So that was nerve-wracking, putting a CV together and all that kind of stuff. But love it. I wouldn't change it for anything now. Yeah.
And so how long ago was that?
That was about 10 years ago. So I've been doing what I'm doing for about 10 years now. Yeah.
Wow.
So in the industry for about 31 in the building industry. So. Yeah.
And how has the industry changed over the last 10 years from your point of view?
It's becoming more specialised. Like the old days, the builder would build, he would do the foundations, he would do the walls, he'd do the framing. Like if you go way back, my granddad talked about in between jobs, he was making windows, he was making joinery, for the next job. There wasn't a window crowd that he would go to, he was making it, So it's come a long way. Like it's really specialised now. So you have your slab guy that comes in, the foundations, he does that. And then the boys come in, slap up the framing and do the roof. And by the time they've done that, the next slab's down ready for them, and you've got someone else to come in and do the exterior cladding or the jib. It's becoming more specialised.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Even because it used to be just more in the upper end, because you get the guys like the Ross Bannons of this world, whatever, they'll come and do the specialised staircase or something like that. And I think people are a lot more open, and I guess the market's moving that way, right? Where the industry is, where it's sort of more collaboration with different specialists.
Time is money, right? And the faster you can get the job done. And that's where that specialising comes into it, right? Like if you're really good at whacking up jib, and you're faster than the crew that you've got, you'd use them for the same dollars, right? But you're getting it done quicker. But,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I don't know whether it's good. I think the skill level's probably disappearing a little bit in terms of in scope. Like the old days, you used to, like I said, you go from foundations all the way up to putting the roofing iron on. Well, not many guys get exposed to putting roofing iron on now. So, and it's a skill, and I think the olden day builders are probably better builders in terms of building a house from start to finish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of similar to the medical industry, really, if you think about it. It's all specialised, right? And then at the end, you have people are so focused in on, you get like an eye specialist or something, and he's so focused on the eye that when it comes to anything else, he probably knows less than a GP that just started, right?
Yeah.
And you just, as time goes on, you actually start knowing less and less and less and less about the wider part of health.
Absolutely.
And that's probably the same with building. You sort of just specialise in your little area.
So foundations is probably the biggest area that young guys struggle with scope these days, because a lot of companies get foundation crews in. So a lot of young apprentices don't get exposed to a lot of that now. There are guys starting to do that more often now that the industry's slowed up a little bit. They're doing the foundations instead of subbing it out to keep their boys busy. So it is good that they're getting more exposure to this sort of thing, because really when you think about a building apprenticeship, you should be able to build a house from start to finish, right?
That's like the goal, right?
That's the goal. Yeah.
So in terms of for aspiring, young guys and girls looking to get into building, do you want to explain to us sort of just the structure of how the apprenticeship model works? How long does it take? How do the modules work? What are they going to have to do working, study-wise, that sort of thing?
Yeah, okay. So the first thing a young girl or boy has to do is they have to go and find an employer, right? Once you've found an employer, then you give us a call and we'll come out on site and we'll sign you up to an agreement, which basically says that the employer that you're with will provide the right scope of work for you to get from start to finish in your apprenticeship and train you in the correct way. Once you're signed up, then we come out with a box of books and we hand those over to you, and it's quite daunting when you see these books and you see the look on the apprentices' faces when you hand over all these books and they go, do I have to know all that? And you're like, yeah, mate.
Zero belief, that they're going to be able to get through that.
Holy Toledo, I thought I left school, But it's, so they get all the books, but we break it down into modules like you were talking about. And so the modules come into fundamentals, which is basically, your maths, building legislation, all that kind of stuff, drawings and specs. And then we target certain areas, tools and equipment and bits and pieces, and we set smaller goals to get you to the end goal. But we work closely with the apprentice and the builder to find out what they're doing on site, so that what they're learning is related to what they're doing, so that it's easier to learn and pick up, so that when they're doing something they can ask more questions about why they're doing it and all that kind of stuff. So you work quite closely with both. Having a strong relationship with the employer is really important, so that you can get some real, some feedback you've got to have feedback from the employer that's honest, because for me to get my apprentice and help them get from start to finish, you've got to have honest feedback.
Yeah.
So that I can relay that back to the apprentice and say, hey, things are going well, boss is happy, but he'd like you to turn up on time a bit more, maybe get to work a bit earlier, or your work ethic needs to be improved in terms of speed around the site, But I can relay that a lot better than a boss can, if I can relay that to the apprentice, it's not like they're getting told off from the employer, if you know what I mean. So
that's a great way to kind of use you guys.
Absolutely, we're here to get them from start to finish, and in the allotted time frame, which is about 3.5 to 4 years. That's right. That's what it should take. Yeah.
And I like that it's contextual and relevant to what they're going to be. They're going to be working on a certain aspect next week. It's kind of relevant that they sort of learn about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I say to them, look, we'll set goals now, but a lot of employers now, they've got 2 or 3 jobs on the go, and the apprentice is the first one that gets shifted around from site to site, right? Oh, Johnny needs a handover on that one doing the reinforcing, and next minute you're off on helping with a retaining wall, so it can change all the time. But I keep saying to them, hey, when you move around, say if you move over to a reinforcing job and you're tying steel, start reading up on that. Have a look at the books, look at what the different types of reinforcing are. Or if you move to a retaining wall, go and have a look at that section. Look at the different types of retaining walls. See if you can relate the retaining wall that you're building to the one that's in the book, and read about it. And so, because learning's happening all the time, and a lot of young guys don't understand that, and girls, is that a lot of times when they start their apprenticeship, they want to see results, and they don't understand that there's the first 1.5 to 2 years, bulk of their learning is on site. You're learning processes and all this kind of thing. And then when you start taking those learnings into your books and you start reading about it, you go, oh yeah, I've done that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I get it.
It's like you were saying before, right? It's like because of the school system is set up that that there's terms, and then you do certain tests, and someone comes and marks it, and you get your report card. And that's how we've been taught our whole life.
Absolutely, yeah.
And now all of a sudden they jump onto an apprenticeship, and for like a year and a half, they almost feel like they're getting no sort of like positive feedback of or an idea of improvement or progress.
Yeah, absolutely. In the school system, like they've got to meet so many credits before the end of the year, and they've got to have so many in the first term or whatever, and they've got goals to get to that. But when they come into the real world and they're on site, it isn't broken down like that, and that's where I think they get a little bit lost, and they feel like they're not achieving, but they are. Every day they're on site, they're learning something new, and if they can sort of calm down a little bit and just sit back and go, hey, everything's okay, and trust our system, you know what I mean, and trust the way that we're putting them through the qualification, then they'll do well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What percentage of apprentices sort of like drop out after in the first year? Or
I think from the school leavers, I think there's only 5% that complete, from what I've heard.
Right, so the young guys that come through, only 5%.
Straight from school, yeah, 5%. That's
right.
Yeah.
But if you're a bit more mature, mid-20s or something like that, it goes up.
Yeah, I think before you get into the building industry, it'd be good if you can do at least 2 or 3 months on site, really get a feel for it. I think the gateway system's great, that a lot of young people can sort of go through school in the gateway system, and if they want to have a crack at building, then they can do that through the school process, and that gives them a bit of an indication of whether they want to become a builder or not, And
yeah, what's the gateway system?
It's at the schools. They have it's called Gateway, and they go out on site. I think it's once a week. So they'll go onto a site, whether it's an auto electrician or a sparky or a builder or whatever, and they get this opportunity, sort of like a work experience type thing.
Cool, that's quite good.
Yeah, I think if you can get through that, like if a trade's where you're heading, that would be the way to get some sort of exposure into the building industry, to see if you like it or not, because it's not everyone's cup of tea, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of, I think that's great, because it just shows, because when I was at school, it was not really, that wasn't really shown as a path. It was more, and this is a long time ago now, but when I was at school, it was more like, you do the academic thing, or if this isn't for you, then you can go try a trade, like as you didn't succeed in this, so you can go try a trade. Where I think now it's great that so they can show you that path, and give you that exposure to it. You being a builder in the past and having that experience, sort of, how has that influenced your sort of method of training these guys? Has it had an impact, do you think?
Yeah, it definitely makes things easier when it comes to assessing the qualification, and explaining in some cases, like when you're on site and you're talking to a young person, and they're sort of, you're looking at their foundation or something, you can relate to them, and ask them some questions about, hey, how'd you go about doing this, or how'd you about, what made you decide to do it that way, and it's definitely I enjoy it because of that interaction with them.
Yeah.
You actually become a bit of a father figure to some of them. Like some of these young guys, they go through some horrible times, and it's not just I'm here for an apprenticeship to get them from start to finish. And sometimes, mate, you get questions about their personal life. What shall I do with this and what shall I do with that? So that pastoral care thing is huge. And you become a mate without being a mate, if you know what I mean. You're a friend, someone that they can call up on and say, hey, I'm struggling with this or whatever, and I get that. But I enjoy that side of it as well. That's, if you can help someone out and if they can bounce an idea off them. I had one guy that was struggling to make payments on his car. What shall I do? And you just try and help them out the best you can. It's simple stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It must be quite rewarding, right? The sort of like a bigger purpose aspect to the job when you have a bunch of young guys that you're training up, and you can actually watch them go from, green, all the way through to being a bit more mature 3-4 years later, now
Absolutely.
qualified, and that satisfaction that comes with that.
Absolutely, and you see the growth. So when you first meet a young trainee on site, the conversation that you have with them at the start is different to the conversation that you have with them 2-3 years down the track. But it's really important to build that relationship with them. So a lot of my guys, I've got guys that have trained for Olympics. They're training, for rugby. So you pick up. Some guys are interested in 4-wheel driving. I've got no idea about 4-wheel driving, but I've learned a lot from it because you talk to these, you've got to talk to them and make them feel comfortable on site. So getting to know what their interests are makes that happen. So when you rock up, you say, how'd the 4-wheel driving go on the weekend, mate? And went up to such and such place and we drove through the hills and did this, that, and the other thing. And all of a sudden, they're more relaxed. So when you come to do an assessment, it's different. So there's quite a bit in being a WAE, like our job, our role.
Yeah.
And it's not more than just assessing.
Yeah, 100%. And a lot of these guys are younger as well. I know there's some more mature apprentices as well, but a lot of the guys are young, and then that is just kind of a good way to kind of impart into their lives as a young guy or girl as well.
Yeah.
Let's, in terms of, we had Bex, the builder, on, Rebecca on like a while ago. How many, are there more and more females coming into the industry from your experience, or is it still sort of like slow in terms of the uptake on females?
Yeah, I think they're creeping in more and more. I have signed one female off, Lisa Buchanan. I had her from start to finish, and she's now running jobs, and now I'm working with her. She's got apprentices under her.
Cool. So
it's really cool, that transition. 1 minute she's an apprentice doing a time. Now I'm calling on her for, advice on how an apprentice is going and what they're doing and their skill levels and all that kind of thing. So the role's changed.
Yeah.
She's running jobs, and it's awesome to see. She's actually got, there's Caitlin Wilson. She's part of that team as well, and she's now completed all her knowledge section. So we're now working on her skills, getting her exposure to certain areas, transitioning from unsupervised to commercially competent. So we're currently working on that with her, and getting the opportunities for her to prove herself. So. Yeah, it's awesome to see them in there. I don't think, you hear a lot of builders saying, they can't do the heavy lifting, they can't do this. You're not allowed to lift above a certain weight anyway without two people, you know what I mean? So I don't think that's part of it anymore. Like, they've got real good attention to detail, and I think they don't seem to panic. Like in stressful situations, I don't see that. Like when you talk to them and say, how'd you go about doing that? And we talked about it and we did this and we did that. Like there's some real good things that they can bring to the table. And I spoke to one of them about like the banter on site, and how young guys, because young guys are young guys, right? And you get a female on site and the atmosphere changes, and I think that's something that a lot of companies have got to sort of understand, is where the line is, and making sure that everyone gets treated the same. Like just because you're a female doesn't mean you have to do the sweeping the floor all the time or whatever, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like it's...
Yeah, I think it's... I personally think it's great. I think it's great that there's more females in the trade, but I also think it's important for us to talk about all these like little things that come out, because these little growing pains, right, of transition. Yeah. And I think the more we talk about it, the more it can get like solved and dealt with. Yeah. And so, because you find yourself sort of like, dancing around certain topics, right? Because of the male-female aspect and stuff. But I think it's best if everyone just openly talks about it.
Absolutely.
Women, men bring different, generally
strengths,
brings different strengths. Not all women are the same and not all men are the same, but
absolutely.
generally they bring different strengths. And And so, and if everyone's going to be treated the same, then obviously the female also, if there's, of how they would treat the guy, they got to treat the girl. But then there's also an aspect that I believe where you should show women a different level of respect in certain areas.
Absolutely.
And so let's talk about it.
I agree with you. I think the strength thing is not an issue. There's girls out there that are stronger than men. That's
yeah.
If you say every man's stronger than a woman, there's something wrong with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
But when you run a business, you understand your employees, right? And you understand their strengths. And I would give certain guys certain jobs because I knew they were strong in that area, and then other guys were stronger in others. So you'd work your crew, right?
For sure.
And it's no different than with boys and girls. Like there might be a girl that's actually bloody good at tying reinforcing steel better than the other guy, so you get her on it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's any different in terms of culture and stuff like that. You might have a crew that you have like a couple of like hippie surfy dudes.
Yeah.
You might have some other like real jockey rugby, and then they're different.
Yeah.
And so you have to manage that, and the same with
absolutely.
So I think it's the more we kind of talk about it, the more we and also there could be like some elements where the maybe a particular smaller girl or whatever is not as strong as a guy maybe or whatever.
Yeah.
But you just got to work around that.
Yeah,
and she might be better in other aspects, like you say, attention to detail or something.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely. And there'll be girls out there that are stronger than some of the boys, and you'll look at them and you'll go, she's better off to go and lift that thing because look how Johnny will snap in half,
yeah, it's more individual, right? You got to look at the individual and be open to open to that. So no, I think it's really good.
Yeah.
In terms of apprentices in general these days, though, Blair, what do you think? A lot of builders feedback out there saying it's sort of changed over the last 10 years. Apprentices are a lot different these days, and now maybe you can put it down to social media, down to the fact that there's a lot more alternative ways to make money out there these days than there were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. How have you seen apprentices that are coming through? How have they changed in a positive and negative way?
It's an interesting one because the apprenticeship hasn't changed, like the qualification hasn't changed. The way it gets delivered's changed a little bit, and the way that we deliver it. So from that side of it, it hasn't changed, but I think the attitudes have changed a little bit. I think a lot of trainees now expect to get onto a job and go straight to the glory work, without having to do the hard yards. And I think that's part of the trade that's probably trained, whereas it was expected in the old days. When you started an apprenticeship, you're going to be sweeping the floors and you're going to be picking up the rubbish, and that was your duty for the first 6 months, and that was expected. And when you rocked up, you knew you were going to do that. Whereas it's changed now, whereas, these guys are keen. They want to get in and start doing the finishing lines and bits and pieces, and you have to pull the reins back a bit and say, okay, mate, you're not really ready for that. Let's get you past measuring something correctly and cutting it to the correct length, before you get into that. Because materials are expensive, right? You can't afford to let someone go rip shit and bust into something, and then they cut it the wrong length, and all of a sudden you're buying more materials. And so I think they've got to understand that a little bit. There is the stepping stone, the little processes that are involved. But I try and explain that to them at the start. Hey, look, mate, if you get asked to dig holes, you've got to dig holes, at the end of the day. That's part of the process,
Yeah, I think it's so it's probably like a bit of a lack of patience there, eh? There,
Yeah.
sort of want to just get stuck in.
Yeah, and it's good that they're keen, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a positive thing.
Yeah, that is a positive. As long as it's it's for the right reasons, right? I want to learn. I want to become good at what I'm doing. So yeah, let me have a crack at it. That's a good reason, not because I want to do that because I think I'm worth. I've got to do that. That's what builders do. I want to do it because I want to achieve. Not because I think I should be doing it.
Yeah, not entitled.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hard one, and then in terms of the qualification side as well, there's a lot of people that a lot of builders that I've talked to that sort of feel that their guys get signed off, before they're ready and things like that. Now, obviously that might not be your guys or whatever, but do you think there's a bit of what's happening out there in terms of guys getting trained up and getting signed off as the standards where they should be?
Yeah, that's an important part of our role, right, is to make sure, because you've got a unit standard that you've got to work to, and as a WAE, we've got to make sure that they meet that standard. Now, some employers, their standards are above the unit standard, and then there's other guys that their standards are actually below. So you've got to try and align them with the unit standard. So the guy that thinks the apprentice has got to be able to build a curved wall that's above the unit standard, right?
Yeah.
And the other guy might be, if he's capable of cutting nogs in a stud to length, that's it. He's capable of framing a wall. But there's more to it than that. So you've got to bring both those guys down to that industry standard and to the unit standard.
Yeah.
And that's our role.
Yeah, and I guess
to
that's
make sure they understand that.
Yeah, because I was on a phone call with a builder just a couple of weeks ago, and he was swearing on the phone. Well, one of his guys where he was a bit animated. He said as one of his the trainer or educator just signed off his guy on a certain aspect, and he was like, that guy shouldn't have been signed off on that, and he didn't even call me. So is that part of it? Do you need to sort of be on the same page as the builder?
You've got to be talking with the employer quite often.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much in that first year about skill levels, like you're probably going to, you'll talk about it, but when it comes to transitioning from that unsupervised to commercially competent, there's 6 factors they've got to meet. And if they don't meet all those 6 factors, and that's what we basically talk to the employer about, is those 6 factors. And one of them's in doing the job in a commercially viable time frame, right? Speed's a big thing. You might get given a task of doing the skirting in a house or hanging a door, but if it takes you a week to hang the door, then you're not at a commercially viable time frame. You might be doing it unsupervised, but it's taking you too long, right?
Yeah.
So these are the conversations that we've got to have with the employer, with the apprentice, and then saying, well, how long did it take you, mate? Do you think that's a commercially viable time frame to take you a week to hang that door, mate? And they go, oh no, not really. As an example, it's not. I'd hope it wouldn't take that long to hang a door, but yeah. So you've got to talk constantly with the employer.
Yeah.
Yeah. You shouldn't be signing anything off without having that conversation with the employer. That's just like the biggest no-no, because at the end of the day, they're the one training them and see them more often on site, right? And I get a lot of apprentices where they go, I can do that, I should be commercially competent in that, and then you go and have a chat to the boss, and you say, well, the last time he did the retaining wall, he didn't read the plans properly and put the retaining posts in too far apart or something like that. It's like,
yes, you don't know.
Yeah. So you might have built the wall, but you didn't build it right.
Yeah. I've got some questions. I've asked the internet for some, if anyone has any questions for you today.
Oh, really?
Blair. So I haven't read them. So let's hope they are. There's no dodgy ones. Okay, let me click in here on the old Insty. Okay, I've got 5 questions for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Gus Sweeney asks, as an apprentice of the goal of eventually starting my own business, what advice do you have, and how should I go about it?
About starting a business.
Well, he's an apprentice now, and he wants to eventually start his own business, I guess.
Okay.
Is there any specific way he should be approaching it?
The way I see things, being a business owner is a big ask, right? It's a big task. And there's more to just being a builder, and we've talked about that. And I think if that's what he wants to do, then keep working really hard, keep learning off his employer, look at the way the employer interacts with clients, how they deal with subcontractors, all that sort of stuff. Maybe start taking note of how long it takes to do a job. Say if you're building a deck that's 30 square metres, take note of how long it took you to do the piles, how long it took you to do the set out, whatever. So that when you come to price your first jobs, obviously you're going to start doing little smaller jobs to start with, probably to get the hang of it. But if you can, because you're pricing an hour, and if you don't get those hours right, if you might price the job and say it's going to take 40 hours, but the other guy that's pricing it says it's going to take 20 hours. He's going to get the job ahead of you, right? Because his price is going to be cheaper. So, yeah, I think taking note of all those little things, just how businesses are run, read up on that, read up on taxes and accountants and pricing and invoicing and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot in it, right?
Yeah.
So I would say to a young guy that wants to aspire to be an employer and going out on their own, look at all those things. It's because you are an employer. You've got staff underneath you. There's a lot in it.
And would you recommend getting qualified and then straight going on your own, or would you recommend sticking around?
If I had my time again, I would probably do it a little bit differently, and get qualified and stay with my employer a bit longer, and really sort of get the nuts and bolts of running a business, sort of look at that and do that before going out on your own. I pretty much went out on my own before I was qualified, so that was different. But I was lucky. I had a father that helped me out in terms of how to run a business and what to do and invoicing and pricing and all that side of it. So I was very lucky from that side of it. But there's a lot of young guys out there that don't get that. So I would use or work for my employer a bit longer after I was qualified, for sure.
Yeah.
Give back a little bit, because they've trained you. So if you can give back a little bit once you're qualified, that makes it all worthwhile for the guy that's trained you. There's a lot of guys out there, they get qualified and then they bugger off and work for someone else. So this guy's put in the hard yards training you, and you've gone, yay, I'm qualified, bugger you, mate, I'm off to work for someone else now, which is, it just doesn't seem fair in my books. If you can give back a little bit, that would be a word of advice I would give some young guy, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just positive, because you live on a positive note when you give back. Why wouldn't you also then, while you're there, try to get as much information from your employer in terms of how they do certain things? Like, hey, do you mind if I have a look at how you price these jobs, or once you're a few years in, and just learning and soaking up. It's all kind of like free learning there that you can take. So I think slowing it down, having a bit more patience, and I'm the last person that is like that in my personality. I'm sort of go, but I think I've come to realize this as well. Like, if you could just sort of slow down, have a bit more patience, learn a little bit more along the way, do things well, or learn how to do things well, you're much better off. Yeah,
look, not every apprentice is going to run a job, right? And some guys don't want to have their own businesses. So if you are that young guy that wants to have their own business, then, later on in your apprenticeship, maybe go and have a chat to your boss and say, hey, one day I'd like to be my own boss, right? I'd like to have a crew. But in the meantime, I'd love to be able to run a job. Can you train me up to run a job? And the employer will probably go, hey, that's awesome, mate. I'd love another guy that can run a job, because I can get another job on the go and teach you how to run a job properly, and you become more beneficial to the employer, because he can have 2 more jobs on the go or whatever, because he's got a foreman on one and you on the other training.
Yeah. Great advice.
Yeah.
Life of a Builder asked, why are there current qualified builders who do not meet the qualification standards?
I would put that down to the other provider, because they've been around a long time compared to us. Maybe not communicating enough with the employer.
Okay.
I think that's probably, I think WAE has got to make sure that you meet standards and collect the correct evidence to sign you off something. And I do hear a lot about guys out there that, they're asked to do a cavity system, but they didn't know. And it shouldn't be like that, right?
No.
No.
Cool. Thomas J. Martin asks, can an apprenticeship be reduced if you have 10 plus years of construction experience?
Absolutely. So there's a short duration process where if you've got 10 years experience, then what we get you to do is we get you to put a portfolio together of all the people that you've worked with and what you've built in the areas that you've been in. And then we get you to give us some phone numbers of those people so that we can call them up and verify what level of skill you were at when you were working for them, whether you were working at limited supervision, whether you did the job on your own, what level were they at, did they do it properly, all that kind of stuff. And you go through, you get all that work verified, then you've still got to sit down and we've still got to ask you the questions, make sure you meet the knowledge side of it, right? So. Yep. But it's a shorter process. So I've just recently had a guy that had 14 years experience under his belt, and over the last 7 months, he to start with put the portfolio together for me. I was lucky in that the last 8 years he's worked for the same employer.
Cool.
So it was very easy for me to get work verified, and then we just broke the qual down into certain sections, and we just went through, and over that 7-month period, he's gone and filled the gaps in his knowledge, looked at each section and assessed him on those knowledge questions, because I knew that his skills were at a certain level because the employer said they were. So he's just been signed off, and he was rapt because he said to me, it was the first thing he's passed since, like he said he didn't even pass anything at school.
Wow.
The only thing he had passed was his driver's license. So he was absolutely over the moon. But he followed the process, right? He had trust in me and how we were going to go about doing this process. He followed every step, and we got there in a short duration of 7 months.
Yeah, that's great. It's a great success story.
Yeah.
Passive Pete asks, how do you get through bookwork without physically doing the work at the time?
I suppose if you don't want to do bookwork, then you've got to ask the questions on site. All your learning is going to be done on site. So what you would have to do is understand the unit standard and what's required of you. And that's in our Guide to Assessment book. So in that book, we've got the qualification broken down, and then we have questions that they need to know. So what he would have to do is go into that, look at the questions under that section, and then when he's on site, make sure he's asking those questions on site. Hey, how do we go about this? How do we go about that? If you don't want to do any bookwork,
I think he's asking the other one. How do you get through bookwork without physically doing the work at the time? So that's the other way around as well. So then how do you get through the bookwork without actually, so I guess he's saying, like, how do you do the bookwork without, like, or can you do the bookwork without doing it practically? I think is probably.
Oh, okay. So I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, see, there is a knowledge component to it, but unfortunately, the way the apprenticeships run, it's an on-site learning thing. The way that we run our course. So, you get signed up with an employer. I think there are providers out there where you can just go and do the knowledge component, but I don't understand why you'd do that, because you're earning while you're learning when you're on site. Whereas if you go to a polytech, you're basically sitting in a classroom just learning the knowledge, and you're paying for that, but you're not earning. So I don't.
I hope that Passive Pete. I hope we answered your question there. It was a bit ambiguous in terms of how it was structured.
Yeah.
Jake W. Bothwick asks, how easy is it to change from BCITO to Builders Academy?
It's very simple. Yeah. So a lot of what I say to my apprentices is that it's your qualification, right? So you can choose the provider that you want to deal with. You're the one paying for it, so you've got every right to choose who you want to run with. What happens is, if they want to run with us and get visits every 6 weeks and have free night classes, then it's just as simple as phoning up Builders Academy and saying, can you come out on site? We'll bring the paperwork. We'll get you signed up. Then all you have to do is send an email to the other provider and just inform them that you're going to, you want to be withdrawn from the course, and you're going to start with another provider, and they'll withdraw you. Once you've got that withdrawal date, you'll be loaded into our system, and I'll be out to see you.
Cool. And so the modules are all very similar, and it's
the same course.
Okay.
It's exactly the same course. So it's the same qualification. At the end of the day, it's just how we provide. So you'll get more regular visits. We'll see you more often in terms of your skill levels, what you're doing, what you're performing. We'll set smaller goals, smaller steps to get to the end goal, instead of lumping it all in one hit and making you study like crazy in 1 week before your visit, after a 3 or 4 month period. 6 weeks you haven't got time to sit down and relax. I'll be on your case, in 6 week time, I'll be here. So you're getting another text message from me in 5 saying I'm coming to see you again. But most of them are putting it in their diaries now, and they're going, shit, I'll see you in such and such a date. Yeah, mate, I'll see you.
So outside of, so you guys obviously come more regularly. That's great, right? What are the benefits outside of obviously having them they have to learn less things within each period, right? They have to cram a whole bunch of stuff because you come more regular. That's good. What are some of the other benefits of coming more regularly?
I think that interaction, you're building a relationship with your apprentice as well, right? It's not just about being assessed. It's not just, a lot of young guys or people think that it's all about, a visit's all about assessment, and it's not all about assessment. So it's about, hey, what are you learning on site? What are you currently involved with? Hey, what have you learned about that? So because I'm coming to see them every 6 weeks, I'm seeing more work that they're involved with than over a 4 month period, right? So all of a sudden you're starting to build this relationship with them, and you're talking to them, and you're going, oh, how did that last retaining wall end up, mate? Oh, let's go and have a look. You can actually physically go and see it because he's still on the same job,
Yeah, that's good, Yeah.
Whereas 4 months down the track, they might be on a different job. You ask them, well, how did it go? You can't go and look at it. All you've got is a photo, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely think, and the relationship with the employer as well. And talking with them more regularly on how their progress is going, what can they work on. It's hard to remember as an employer. It's hard to remember what your apprentice has done over 4 months.
Yeah.
But over a 6 week period, it's really easy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how, and just being there, being seen there more regularly, and you build that rapport. My dad used to be a farmer, so you'd love this in terms of the farming, and he used to always say to me, the more he'd go see a sheep, not doing anything, just the more you go and check up on them, the better everything will go, even if you don't do anything extra. It's just being there and
getting used to you. They become quiet, and more manageable. And
100%. And so, no, that's really cool, So, in terms of cost, so how much does it cost for a apprenticeship these days?
Currently, we are free for the first year.
Okay.
But if you're a student coming straight from school, a young person coming straight from school, it's $850.
Okay.
Unless you sign up prior to, I think, August, it runs out, that offer.
Yeah.
But it's $850 per year.
Yeah. So that's you guys have that special offer before August this year.
Yeah.
And so that's cool. So what advice would you then have to someone considering an apprenticeship in New Zealand? Obviously it's different in Australia for Australian listeners, or UK, US, but in New Zealand, what advice would you have for them?
I would say pick an apprenticeship or a trade that you're really passionate about. That makes a big difference. Don't do it because your careers advisor said that's the only thing that's your qualifications or what you've learnt at school is going to give you. So I would say just be passionate about what trade you choose, because because at the end of the day, you're working for a long period of time, right? And don't be scared to move and change. Like if you leave school and you go into a plumbing apprenticeship and you're halfway through it, don't be scared to change. But I would complete that apprenticeship and then move on to something else. And if you're on site and you're going, I'd rather be a builder, complete your plumbing apprenticeship and then go down the path of being a builder. You know, for the 3 or 4 years that you're looking at, and probably might be less because you've been involved with it, but it's a small piece of your lifetime, right? 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Over a lifetime, it's nothing. So, yeah, just choose something that you're passionate about, really.
Yeah, passion. Yeah, let it be driven by the passion side.
Yeah.
I think it's really good,
Yeah.
because that's going to keep that fire burning.
And don't be scared of doing the hard yards, right? Nothing's easy in this world. You know, if it means that you have to read some books, you've got to read some books, you know, at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah. There's also a lot of, in terms of learning, I know some young builders may be adverse to learning, but there's also different ways of learning these days, right?
Absolutely.
You can watch videos on certain aspects, like how to, you want to get into business. Oh, I don't want to read this book about accounting. Well, go on YouTube, type in how do I read a balance sheet or profit or loss.
Absolutely.
So you can just watch videos on things and upskill yourself very quickly on YouTube, these days as well.
Absolutely. But make sure it's relevant. So when you search, make sure you put in the search engine NZ. Not how they do it in USA.
That's good advice as well. So what advice would you then have for the business owners to better support their apprentices?
I think understanding your apprentice is key. Understanding their strengths and weaknesses. But not just giving them jobs that are always on their strengths, because you've got to work on their weakness to bring them up to industry, right? You know, at the end of the day, you've got to bring them to an industry standard. So I feel a lot of employers go, okay, Johnny's strong at doing this, I'll just keep giving him that task. You've signed a contract saying that you'll provide training, and that training's covers every scope, right? So yeah.
I think that's good advice as well, because people may forget that, because you sort of go the path of least resistance sometimes, right?
Absolutely.
He can do that. Chuck him on the jibbing or whatever. And, that's really good advice. Okay, we're going to do some rapid fire questions now.
Cool.
If you're ready
Go
for
for
that. No, it's been good, Blair. It's been pretty educational for me as well, so that's quite good. Okay, what's your favourite tool?
Hammer.
It's got to always be the hammer. Worst on-site injury you've seen?
Nail through a finger.
Oof.
From a nail gun.
I bet that happens a lot. What's the most common mistake new apprentices make?
The 100 mil.
These days, apprentices are A, soft, B, open-minded, C, hard workers.
Ooh. Is there an all of the above?
Yeah. Let's go all of the above. D. I'll allow it. Coffee or Red Bull?
Coffee.
EV or petrol head?
Petrol head.
I don't think anyone has said EV yet, or dared to say, hey, Chen. Yeah. Rock or hip hop?
Rock.
Jock or hippie?
All of the above.
All of the above. You got the cricket and you got the hippie side as well.
Yeah.
What's your most used emoji on your phone?
Laughing face, yeah.
Are you an extrovert or introvert?
I'd say extrovert.
Rugby or UFC?
Rugby.
Do you watch Super Rugby these days or just the international stuff?
I'm more of a leaguey.
Oh, leaguey. Yeah, you watch
yeah.
the Warriors?
Yeah, Warriors.
Oh, yeah. The Warriors are pretty popular
NRL.
these days.
Love
yeah.
it.
Yeah. What's your favourite hobby?
Being out on the water. I love fishing. Yeah. Boating. Yeah.
It's great, eh? Wine or beer?
Beer.
Milwaukee, DeWalt or Makita?
DeWalt.
Cool. What's the last piece of advice you can give to apprentices as a parting thought?
Ask questions. Don't be afraid. You know, there's no such thing as a dumb question. Always ask why we're doing this. You know, How can we do it better? Always critique yourself. Look at the task that you've just performed and say, how can I do that better? No one's going to say, oh, he's a dick because he wants to get better. Like anyone that wants to improve, mate, the guys they'll help you all the time. Yeah.
That's awesome. I think that's a great piece of advice to conclude this
Awesome.
This chat. So that's it. Did you have fun?
Loved it, mate. The best thing about it was I went out and got a special haircut just for the occasion.
Oh,
so
looking
trying to look
smart.
sharp. Yeah.
Looking so sharp today. Thanks, Blair. Appreciate
Awesome,
that, mate.
mate. Thank
And,
you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.